everyone, and welcome to A Stitch in Time. Today is Thursday. It is November 25th, 2021. It's my younger sister's birthday today, and this is episode 202. My name is Carol. My Ravelry name is Knits and Pearls, and I live in the Fraser Valley of British Columbia, Canada. Those of you who have watched before may recognize that I am sitting on the opposite side of my craft room from where I usually sit to record. It's only mid-afternoon, but it is really dark and gloomy outside. It's raining again, and I thought I might have better lighting over here with the help of the overhead light and the halogen light that sits over in the corner over there. Plus, I cleaned my craft room yesterday, so the trunk where I am sitting is free and clear of everything except the things that I'm going to talk about this episode. I'm surrounded by a treasure trove of knitting projects and fabric and yarn. Usually this trunk and the floor in front of it becomes a dumping ground for all sorts of things. And I couldn't take it anymore. I feel like I want to get some things organized before I head into this last month before Christmas. So I did a tidy up of my living room and all my crafty supplies in there, and then this room was next. I still need to tackle my office and my bedroom. I'm a piler. Things get piled up on surfaces if they're cleared, no matter how much I resolve not to do that. So anyway, you didn't need to know all that. I've had a pretty good week. How has your week been? I have lots of different crafty things to talk about. I have several works in progress for knitting. I have some sewing, I have some weaving, maybe even a couple of acquisitions, and some things that I'm planning ahead for. So get comfortable, maybe grab yourself something to drink. I've made myself a cup of tea as usual, and yeah, let's get into it. So first up, I showed you these socks last week. I had just started them. I'm knitting them out of this skein of Zabberball Crazy. I believe the colorway number is 2404, and it's called Tiefwasser. I think that's how you say it in German, but that translates to deep water. So there's the tag, and there's the phone. I'll be right back. Okay, where was I? I think I was showing you my sock. So, or maybe I was just showing you the yarn. I was hoping that the colors would show up a little bit more true in this lighting today, but I think still struggling with that turquoise blue. This is a really nice bright greeny blue, and it just does not show up on camera. In any case, here's the progress I've made with my sock since last week. So it is a 64 stitches on a 2mm needle. I did a lot of ribbing this time because I was trying to get to the end of this color change. Unfortunately, this means I have to do the same amount of ribbing on the other sock. It's not my favorite thing to do. And I had originally done this short row heel just working from the ball, but I didn't like the way it looked when I was coming back to the point where I was working just the foot. And so I ended up finding the other end of the ball in the middle here, and I pulled it out and I worked the heel with the yarn from the other end of the ball, so that now as I go forward, this sort of striping pattern or color change is not going to be interrupted. Speaking of interrupting, I'm a little distracted. I am not sure when I ended up having my messenger messages popping up on my computer. They never used to, and my sisters are having just a chatty old time, and so I've turned off the sound so you won't hear the notifications come in. I can hear them on my phone in the living room there, but I get a message that pops up and it's distracting. So if I kind of look down there, you'll know why. Anyway, happy with how that's going. You know, nothing too special, just a plain stockinette sock to work on, you know, as and when I can. But I do love the colors. I'm gonna take a sip of tea here. I think it's cool enough to drink now. Not quite, it's quite hot still. Okay, second project. Oh yes, this one I had started a few weeks ago, a couple weeks ago, and I hadn't really done much on it. This is the Hinterland shawl by Helen Stewart of Curious Handmade, and this is the final shawl in the Shawl Society 5. And now that my like, I think I started this just after my shawlography shawl. It's a 3-color shawl, as you can see. It's triangular shaped and it has this color work in there. So I am using 3 colors of Madeline Tosh Merino Light. So this is my main color. It is called Outlander. This is my next color. This is called Sun Rose, and that's actually pretty good representation of this color. And then this one is called Onyx, just a black. So I'm putting those 3 together. And the black will go where the navy is, and the red will go where the yellow is. So I've just been working on this in the evenings whenever I go and sit and watch TV downstairs with my husband, which is not every night, but it's, you know, many nights. And so I just have that sitting there and I just work on it because it's pretty simple, at least so far. Got this much done. I think I'm at, let's see, just past 15%. So I have a ways to go. And it's hard to tell, this probably isn't the best yarn to use for this part, but I'm doing it anyway. Hopefully you can see there's some texture going on. So it's alternating stripes of garter stitch and then this, it's not exactly a slipped stitch pattern. It's you yarn over, you knit 2, and you put your yarn over the stitches that you've just worked. So you end up with this line that goes across them. So I am on the last section of this textured pattern, then I have another section of garter stitch, and then it's time to start the color work. So I'm excited to get to that point. But yeah, I think it's pretty. I like how the speckly yarn looks, and yeah, I think it's fine, especially when it's blocked out. I think you'll see that texture pattern just even a little bit more. So enjoying that, just taking this in little, you know, small bites, and eventually, you know, it will become a shawl. Let's see. Oh yes. So again, I've talked about this sweater that I'm making called Knit Me Baby One More Time. This is one of the projects that is shown on the project page or on the pattern page, I should say, on Ravelry. Let's see, this is how it normally looks. And this is a pattern by Mary Annarella, and she is Lyrical Knits. So again, you've seen this before. I'm knitting it out of 3 colors of All Points North yarn, which is a British Columbia yarn dyer. So there's their label. And this is Sweet Sock. It is 85% super fine superwash merino and 15% nylon. And the colors are Olive You, Raindrops, and anchors away. This navy is a little bit duller than it's showing up on camera. I love this combination. Now, I had showed this to you before, and I actually had two skeins of the raindrops, and one was quite light like this. The other was a much darker, had a lot more speckling going on. So I was alternating skeins. And even though I was doing that, I was finding that I didn't really like how it looked. It was just too splotchy, too dark. And so what I decided to do was, rather than make this a long-sleeved sweater, which would require two skeins of the raindrops colorway, I decided to make it more of a spring/fall sweater and knit it with short sleeves as it was originally intended. And so that way I could just use the lighter version of the raindrops colorway and not have such a splotchy body to it. So I did take it back to the striping, the top of the bottom of the green here, and I redid the stripes. However, after I did that, I knit for, I don't know, maybe an inch or so, and found that all the speckles and things were kind of lining up and pooling, kind of moving at an angle across, almost spiraling, I guess, is what would have happened if I kept going, and I didn't like it. So hopefully the third time is the charm, because what I ended up doing was just taking it back to the bottom of this stripe here. I divided the skein in half, and now I'm alternating these two skeins. I was really hoping to get away from alternating skeins because I really don't enjoy it, but I just didn't like the way it was pooling. That's some of my gray hair there. And I decided to give this a try. And if this doesn't work, then I'm going to have to reconsider that sweater so far, but it's only been, you know, a few rounds. It seems to be working out, you know, pretty well, but it's hard to tell because it is only a few rounds. I won't really know for sure until I do another couple of inches probably. Having said that, because this is more of a spring/fall sweater, I'm going to tuck it away for a little while and work on a more wintry sweater in the meantime. So I was just getting going and really enjoying this, but I'm going to put it away for a bit and pick it up in maybe a few months or so. So I've left it in a good spot. Everything's all together. I've marked where I am, and you know, it'll be fine. I'll just come back to that when I'm closer to actually being able to wear it. So, as you might suspect after me showing you my acquisitions last week, I was really in the mood to knit with the Brooklyn Tweed Loft. And I had, if you remember, sorry, I've got to lean and move and stuff. I've got stuff all over the place. It's really strange not being sort of on a chair. I do have my ironing board here set up with the camera or with my computer and stuff, but most of my things are all around here instead. So I'm reaching and leaning and all that stuff. Anyway, to refresh your memory, last week I showed you that I had bought a couple of skeins of Brooklyn Tweed Loft to match this green that I have. I had a sweater's quantity worth of this color. I had some odds and ends left over from a couple of other projects, and I bought this. This is called Button Jar. This is called Tartan, and this is Hayloft. So I had bought those three to use together in a sweater. But I had also pulled out some of the other colors I had. And one that really caught my attention, let's look through my bag here. Oh, I don't have it here. Anyway, one of the colors that really caught my attention was some leftovers of Thistle that I had, which is a beautiful purple color. And anyway, I went looking for a pattern that I could incorporate some, if not all, of these colors into. And I found a Brooklyn Tweed pattern called Ashland. And it is by Julie Hoover. It's written for Brooklyn Tweed. And these are the same sweater, just with two different color palettes. And it's technically a 3-color sweater. But I thought I would have the opportunity, if I wanted, to incorporate some additional colors into it. Now I'm just going to see if I can find my swatch here. I threw everything in the bag. I bet you it's sitting out in the living room. Shoot, it probably is. I'll be right back. I think I know where it is. Figures, it turns out it was here after all. It was just buried under some of the yarn. So I did some swatching. And these are two of the colorwork patterns that are featured. There is another pattern that is just one color, and then there's an additional pattern that incorporates 2 colors. I'm really torn on a few things. One is whether either of these is the right color to use. But I'm not talking about the Hayloft. That definitely is staying. It's whether either the blue or the purple show up well enough to use. The other dilemma I have is whether or not to make it a 3-color sweater or to use multiple colors for the patterns. So I only had a little bit of the Thistle left. So I found a yarn shop here in BC that carries this yarn, and I ordered a skein of Thistle. And miraculously, it arrived in the mail yesterday. And at the same time, I ordered this skein of Embers. And what drove me to do that is when we were in Victoria in Beehive, and I was trying to figure out colors to match with my green yarn, I had already picked up the gold. I have thought of this green and gold for so long. And then my daughter kept pointing to this orange yarn. And I didn't really want an orange, green, and I didn't really want the orange. But I also thought, while I was ordering the skein of purple, well, for one thing, the postage was really high. And I thought to justify it, I would add something else to the order because it didn't change the amount of postage. But also I thought, well, if I have leftovers, maybe I would make something with these 3 colors together. But now I'm just wondering if I should incorporate this into the sweater. And part of me thinks to maybe use these 2 colors as the light colors in the patterns, and then to do maybe the gold and the purple together in one of the bands of color work, maybe put the orange and the blue together in one of the bands of color work, maybe in one of the bands of color work put the orange and the yellow together. That way I could incorporate all those colors. I also have this navy that would work with the orange, or with the gold for that matter. I'm really stuck. I don't know what to do. But I have to say that swatching makes me realize that, you know, you can see the blue and you can see the purple, but they're not going to stand out to the degree that these contrast colors stand out in these sweaters. So I have to reconcile myself to that. Unless I just went with these 3. thoughts. I mean, by the time I record again, I might have already made my decision, but I welcome feedback. You know, it's like asking for advice. I may not take it, but these are the colors I have to work with. What do you think after seeing the swatch? Speaking of the swatch, oh my goodness. I wasted so much time swatching for this sweater. And I don't mean that swatching is a waste of time. It's not. And especially with especially with this sweater. This sweater it's constructed from the bottom up. You work in the round up to the underarms, and then you create some steek stitches so that you can continue working in the round. So then you continue working your body in the round, but you've got steek stitches in your armhole. So after you're done, you cut this piece here at the armhole so you can set in your sleeve. And the sleeve is done the same way. You work your sleeve in the round all the way up to the armpit. Then you do some steek stitches and you work the sleeve cap with steeking stitches. And you steek the armhole and sew in the armhole, or the sleeve into the armhole. I mean, sleeve cap is the word I meant. You sew your sleeve cap into the armhole, and then I think do a neckband or something. So it's definitely worth swatching to make sure I'm making the right size, because I can't rip this one out if it doesn't fit. But I just made such a stupid mistake. So I looked at the gauge, I looked at the suggested needles, and my rule of thumb is to go down about 0.5 millimeter, because I am a loose knitter, and usually if I go down 0.5 millimeter, I'm almost always very close to gauge. And so I tried that originally, and I tried it with both plain knitting, and then they suggest that you go up a needle size or 2 for your color work, which I often do, but not always. So I was experimenting with different needle sizes for the color work, and it was just so off on my gauge. And I tried multiple needle sizes and for both plain knitting and color work, and I really was having a tough time. And then I realized one of my mistakes, especially I was worried about the row gauge, because there is waist shaping for one thing, and for another, your sleeves are constructed so that your pattern lines up with the body. So I had to be correct in both, as close as possible to row gauge and stitch gauge, and know if I had to adjust my row gauge at all by adding some rows or, you know, doing whatever. So then I realized my problem. So this is a handy dandy needle gauge and a knitting I can't talk today. A needle gauge and also like a knitting gauge, and it has this magnification pane, which I sometimes use, sometimes don't. In this case I wasn't using it. I was just laying the needle over my knitting. And originally too, I did this one in the round. Originally I had just done basically the number of stitches I needed to make 4 inches, and I was knitting a 2-inch round swatch. I was going to cut up the side and lay it out for the 4 inches. When I was struggling so much to get gauge, I decided to do basically the number of stitches I needed for 4 inches times 2, knit it in the round, and then just measure. So in any case, so I'm laying out my gauge, you know, just I'd lay out the ruler and I'd count my stitches. And finally it dawned on me what I was doing wrong. So if you look at this gauge, if you look at this line, it just looks like the 1/4 inch and the 1/2 inch, etc. So you see where I'm going here? This from here to here, that's not an inch. That's about 1 1/4 inches. Only it took me a million times to figure that out. That's 1 inch. So no wonder I couldn't get gauge. I had way too many stitches per inch than I needed, according to this, and way too many rows. And as soon as I figured that out, it's like, oh, Carol, how could you be so stupid? Because even when I was counting across 2 inches, I was, 2 inches, I'm still getting too many, right? So once I figured that out, I went back to square one, started with a needle 1/2 millimeter smaller than they suggested, used a needle for the color work 1/2 millimeter bigger than that, and lo and behold, I got gauge, both length and stitch, which is unusual for me because length I often struggle with. I usually have too many rows per inch. So, that I was so frustrated, but I really wanted this sweater, so I just persevered, and I'm really glad I did because I finally figured out what was the matter. But I can't believe I was that dumb that I did it so many times. I did it numerous times, and I was getting really frustrated. I was all the way up to, I think on the color work, I was going to try a 5 millimeter needle next. And it actually calls for, I think, a 4 for the color work part. So in the end, I'm using a 3.25 millimeter for the plain sections and a 3.75 for the color work, and it's working out well. And then I'm doing a 3 for the ribbing. So I did cast on the other day, and I'm working on the ribbing, which just seems endless. I have to do 2.5 inches. So this has just sort of become my whenever kind of knitting. I just, when I have a few minutes, I sit down and I work a row or part of a row, whatever I can get done. So nothing too exciting to show you yet. But you can see, hopefully you can see that the yarn itself has a little bit of blue and a little bit of yellow in it. Flex. I'm not sure how well that's showing up, which is why my initial thought was to use these 2 colors with it. But again, just a little bit concerned with how they're showing up. I mean, I guess if I look at it from here, I mean, I can see the purple and I can see the blue. It's just not a really defined pattern that's showing up. For instance, you probably can't tell from there that there's actually blue underneath this part. It kind of blends in with the green. There, you can see it there. So I don't know. I keep waffling back and forth between what I want to do with this sweater, but I do know I want to knit it, and I do, I am really excited about knitting it, even though it's not my favorite yarn to work with. It does not have a lot of spring to it, if that's a word, and especially the ribbing. I just find it takes longer. It's 1x1 ribbing, so you have to move your yarn to the back and front every stitch, and it just doesn't have that elasticity to it. That's probably the best word I can use rather than springiness. But I don't love knitting with it, but I really think it's a nice sweater, and I know the finished product will be really nice no matter what I end up choosing as far as colors. So it's worth pursuing. But yeah, it's just trying to decide what to do for that color work, and I've got to make the right decision because it's not easy to take out, and it's a lot of work to put into it and not be happy with it in the end. So yeah, feedback is appreciated. Okay, let me see if there's anything else. I think that's it for knitting. Yes, it is. So comfortable here in my trunk. So as I mentioned, I am doing some weaving. I worked up the loom not this past weekend, but the weekend before, and I've done a little more work on it since last episode. And I took my loom over to the window this morning and had another light on, so I was able to get a little bit of footage of my work so far. So I'm going to insert that here, and then I'll be back to talk about some quilting. Here's my latest weaving project. It's a scarf for my daughter for Christmas. I am weaving it from Fibre Studio. They're sweater weather worsted, and it is the Mud Puddle colorway. You can see it's 100% superwash merino. So I bought 2 skeins of this. I basically warped the loom with one of them, and I am weaving the scarf with the other. And so this is what the yarn looks like unwoven. Just a very basic sort of, I guess, variegated yarn in these woodland colors, which is what she was looking for, greens and browns. And I really, really like the way that it is weaving up with just the very subtle crisscrosses, I guess, of color. So maybe, I'm going to guess about 1/3 of the way through now. Really enjoying this. Feeling really good about my edges. Didn't start out so great, but I feel like I've really hit a good rhythm with them. And as always, after the weaving has been blocked, washed and blocked, a lot of the can see my hand through there now, but after it's washed, everything blooms and fills in. So pretty excited about this one. I think it's going to turn out really well. All right, so I'm really excited about my sewing project. I know I talked about it last week. I am making this Bargello Christmas tree skirt. It is, as you can see, a pattern from Shabby Fabrics, and it uses a pre-printed quilt as you go tree skirt kit from June Taylor. That is currently in the mail. I'm hoping it gets here soon. We've definitely been running into some issues with our supply chain. I'll talk about a little bit more about that in a while. But this is the idea of how it looks. So you have 16 panels, and you arrange your fabrics in such a way that when you sew the panels together, you have this spiral effect with your colors. So last week I showed you that I had cut out all the pieces for the tree skirt, but I hadn't started sewing them together yet. So yesterday, after my craft room was all nice and clean, after supper, I came in here and I started sewing the pieces together. So I got halfway. So I have panels 1 through 8 done. And I really think it's going to work because I laid it out on our bed as I was doing each piece. I would lay out next to its neighbor. So even with just half of it, I could see how the colors were starting to work together and spiral. So I'll just show you all my panels. So there's number 1, number 2. So if you can see, you can especially see it with the gold. This is the only fabric that is consistent from panel to panel. Everything else I've kind of matched 2 similar. You can see this one and this one are very similar in coloring. I didn't have enough from I was doing this with a jelly roll and there were no duplicates in it. So I didn't have enough to do them all the same, but I just picked fabrics that were very similar and kind of paired them up next to each other. It's like these 2. They're not the same fabric, but they, you know, at a glance, they look the same. And so, and even these two, those are not the same, but they look very, very similar. So you can see how they're offset, starting that spiral. So there's number 3. I'm not going to be able to do this with any more of them, so I'll just show them to you. There's 4. Some of these are just so gorgeous. 5, 6, 7. I think this is one of my absolute favorites right there on the top. And then 8. So as I mentioned, my living room and kitchen have a lot of blue in them, and what I liked about this collection is it was red, green, and blue, so it was a way of kind of bringing some blue into my holiday decorating without making everything blue, because I really do love the traditional, you know, red and green and gold. So really having fun with that. Can't wait to get back to it, maybe tonight. And then that'll be all ready. I just will have to wait to get the tree skirt itself in the mail, in addition to a few other quilting supplies I ordered. I actually ordered some things from Amazon, and they had been picked up from the facility, which is normally about maybe a 45-minute drive from here, but because of our highways that are either not in use or in limited use, they ended up canceling my order, returning them, and so I had to order them again. So hopefully that will all clear up soon too. Okay, although as I mentioned, a couple things did get through. So as I showed you, I got those 2 skeins of Brooklyn Tweed Loft in the mail. And then one thing that I was really hoping was going to get through was this. This is my Advent set from Fibernymph Dye Works. I had ordered, I forget when she put them up for order. So this is officially called the 2021 Winter Magical Holiday Countdown Collection. This is the 3rd year that I have done the one from Fibernymph Dye Works. Once again, I ordered the full skein to open on the last day. So I've got 10-gram minis that are packaged for each day. I chose the bedazzled base this year. That's the metallic, silver metallic one. There's my day 25 skein of yarn. I also chose bedazzled for this one, but the colorway in the full skein is not related to the collection. It's just a standalone colorway. And then this year, there's a little bag of goodies to open whenever you like. So I'm thinking what I might do is open these the first day, just in case there are things in here that I might want to use on my project. For instance, maybe stitch markers or something like that. So that's my plan, is to have something big to open day 1 of Advent, and then I'll save my full skein till Christmas Day, because that's, you know, put it under the tree and there's a present to open Christmas Day. So I'm very excited about this. Now, of course, the decision is always what? So I'm going to put this over here. Rattle, rattle, rattle. Oh, it's going to go fall into more rattling. Hang on. And my nose is running. Oh. And there is someone at my door. Lots of interruptions today, and then my furnace just kicked on and the heat register is right beside me, so you might hear that in the background too. That was my sister dropping off a Christmas gift for one of our granddaughters that she had ordered on our behalf. And I told you it was dark out there. While we were talking, one of the porch lights came on. They are set up to come on with the changing light as it gets dark. And there's one in particular that always comes on first just because of the way it's situated. So yeah, 3 o'clock in the afternoon and the porch light's going on. That tells you how dark and gloomy it is out there today. In any case, I was talking about my holiday yarn collection for this year and my plans for it. So this year, Lisa of Fibernymph did include a shawl pattern with the collection. But it is a triangular shawl, and while it's very nice and I can definitely see myself knitting it in the future using some of my sock yarn leftovers, because I ordered the bedazzled base with the stellina in it this year, I was wanting something a little more elegant. I also thought I would probably get more use out of a wrap or a scarf of a different shape. So I went looking on Ravelry, as you do, and I came across one of Amba O'Brien's new Advent patterns for this year. And it is definitely a contender. It is called Wrap It Real Good. And as the name implies, it is a wrap. It is basically a rectangular shawl, but it's knit in such a way that your ends go like that and then straight in between. Now it is a DK, it's designed for DK weight yarn or 2 strands of fingering held double. So I don't have enough yarn to knit it as written because our little minis are just 10 grams, about I think 37 or 40 yards of fingering weight yarn. But I thought I could drop down a needle size or 2, several probably, and just knit it with fingering weight yarn as written, and it'll give me a final result that's a little bit narrower and a little bit shorter, basically a scarf size, and that will be just fine with me. And I could definitely see, wearing it with my winter coat, or depending on the occasion, maybe even with a holiday outfit. Not that there's going to be tons and tons of holiday outings this year, but certainly a few. Yeah, so that's not written in stone, but that's what I'm thinking about right now. Another project I intend to do throughout Advent is to work on a pair of Christmas socks, and after thinking long and hard, I've chosen this skein. Also happens to be Fibernymph Dyeworks. This is her Cozy Mountain Christmas colorway on the Mountain Tweed BFL base, and I got this last year. It was a toss between this or her Sugar Plumbed colorway. This one out because it's specifically Christmas, where Sugar Plumbed I could technically kind of knit it anytime. I guess really I could knit that anytime too, but it seemed more Christmassy somehow. And then I have this skein of the Bear yarn that I'm going to use for the heels. So I'm going to be starting those December 1st and starting my holiday collection project also December 1st. I am also planning to do Vlogmas again this year. I have done it in the past. It is it's a lot of work, but it's also really fun. Sometimes I'm worried it's kind of boring because I don't lead a very exciting life most of the time. But if you're like me, you enjoy watching other people's preparations leading up to the big day and get a glimpse into what their homes look like and what their routines are like and their families and things like that. So if you're curious about my boring life, you can tune into Vlogmas most days starting December 1st. Last year I ended up breaking my camera halfway through it. Had to finish up with my phone and my computer. And even though I replaced my camera it's not the same, and I can't really film myself with it anymore. I thought it had a full-on flip-up screen that would look back at me, and it only goes partial part of the way. So it'll be a little bit tricky sometimes filming some things, but I'm going to go for it anyway. Other plans for, well, between now and Christmas is I do have some gifts to make. Now, I am trying to not put too much on my own plate, and I am trying to just be very selective about what gifts I'm going to make, who they're for, if they're really necessary. And if I feel like making something else in that time period, so be it, but I don't want to put a lot of pressure on myself, because it really does tend to suck the joy out of some of my making. So what I do for sure have planned is, as far as gifts go, is Cameron needs a new pair of slippers. I promised him that. I have a shawl that I started for my daughter-in-law Stephanie, which I'm going to dig back out and work on that for her birthday. Her birthday is December 30th. I've just placed an order for sort of a startup kit for knitting for her. She learned to knit. I taught her to knit maybe a couple of months ago now. And so I asked her if she was interested in some knitting supplies of her own, and she was. So I was really happy about that. So I've just going to put together some needles and notions and a few skeins of yarn and get her set up. I've also ordered, hopefully it comes, it's in the same order as my tree skirt kit. I ordered some fabric that I want to put together for a project bag for my daughter Jessica. So that's on the list. What I would like to do but aren't necessary is I would like to weave a scarf for my mom, and I'd like to weave a scarf for my oldest sister, whose birthday is just after Christmas. Those are tentative things. And as far as things for myself, I want to finish the tree skirt, or make the tree skirt, finish it once my batting hopefully gets here. I also want to do maybe a little table runner for our coffee table, one for our kitchen / dining room table, and maybe some placemats. So some of those are not, must-haves, but definitely would like to have. So we'll just see how the month unfolds. It's 1 month today till Christmas Day. Oh boy, that just kind of hit me. Hadn't thought of it quite like that till I said it. So yeah, we'll see what gets done. And of course there's just the usual holiday prep, like Christmas shopping, tidying the house, decorating, etc. And I really have to be on top of things. I have a tendency to kind of while away my mornings, and then all of a sudden my afternoons have disappeared too. So I'm really going to have to just be more on top of things, so if I really want them to be done. All right, so that's it for all the crafty talk. As for what's been going on since last episode, well, British Columbia continues to clean up after last week's epic rainfall. As I mentioned last episode, we received about as much rain in 2 days as we normally do in the entire month of November. It has rained since, it's raining again now, and it is expected to rain a large portion of the coming week. So we're not out of the woods yet. On a personal level, we ended up with a foot of water in our shed, and it was there for probably 4 days before it completely drained. So we went in this weekend, took everything out of the shed, mopped up the last of the water, rescued a few worms, And I gave the floor a good going over with some bleach and water just to kill anything that might have been in the flood water. They're always warning you about contamination. Um, I knew our lawnmower was in there. What I didn't realize is that our weed eater, pressure washer, and leaf blower were also in there, and they were submerged. So we've got them now undercover on our outside deck, and we're just gonna let them dry out as long as it takes. We're not gonna try and start them until we know that they are thoroughly dry, and they may or may not start. The lawnmower is an electric mower. Well, it's not, it's a battery powered mower, I should say, that we just acquired last year. And the batteries, thankfully, were in the house, and it was fairly easy to just wipe out the battery compartment, but I don't know if the water would have affected the motor. I don't really know how these things work. So cross fingers that those things will start up again once they're all dry. If not, you know, it's a small loss compared to what so many people have lost and the situations they find themselves in. So we just can't complain too much. So there have been, well, as I mentioned last week, all of our major transportation routes into the interior of the province were completely cut off because of mudslides and washouts. Some of them continue to be closed. Some are going to be closed for months, if not longer. There are a couple of highways in particular where entire stretches of the highway are just gone. And so we'll see. Others have been opened and then closed again because of additional mudslides, and then reopened. And they are being limited to essential travel only. So that includes things like evacuees returning home, or people who got stuck away from home, and then essential goods and services. To the west, our main Trans-Canada highway remains closed, although by this point it might have opened. It's now about 3:30, and it was apparently set to open at 2 o'clock. That does not mean the flooding has disappeared in that area. There's still a significant portion of Abbotsford or Sumas Prairie, the Sumas Prairie area, that is still flooded. I'm surprised they're even opening the highway, I'll be honest with you, because I saw some aerial footage from yesterday which showed part of the highway still under some water. On the news last night, they talked about how the shoulders were really soft from all the water, and then it's raining again. So I would be surprised if it remains open. And I really sincerely hope that there's not some sort of washout or accident if it is open. My sister, when she came by, said even just from our rain today, she's noticing in some of the fields the water recollecting after it had drained away after last week's rain. And certainly even in the field behind us, I can see the water increasing again. Our backyard is completely, well, it's not dry, but there is no additional water in our yard. So knock wood that remains to be the case. We didn't put anything back in our shed that couldn't take some water this time, so hopefully that stays dry. Some of you have inquired after my mom. Thank you very much for your concern. She's fine. Where she lives, they didn't have any flooding. The highways north and south, and then to the east to the closest major centers are all open and all fine. So she's doing okay. On the other hand, the route we normally take to get to her place is still being repaired. One part of the road just came away, or was significantly damaged, and another area, a waterfall that we normally look for as we travel up to her place or to the cabin. She lives very close to where our cabin is, where often as we drive along this section, we turn our heads to look at the waterfall. Well, I saw a photo, and that waterfall came right across the road and right off the edge of the cliff. If I can get photos of those two things from, I know I saw them on the Ministry of Transportation's Twitter feed. If I'm able to pull those off and put them here, I will do that. So yeah, and it just, supplies continue to be a challenge. Unfortunately, in the couple of days following the rain, a lot of people went crazy and went into the grocery stores and bought up all the fresh fruits and veggies and milk and meat. Sort of felt a lot like the hoarding that happened early on in the COVID-19 lockdown phase. Remember the great toilet paper shortage of 2020? We were assured that warehouses were well stocked and that the grocery chains had ways of getting groceries to our stores and not to panic. And sure enough, things are fine. Cameron had stopped in one day to see if he could get a couple of things we had forgotten to get on the weekend. And there was hardly anything left in the produce section. But he went again the next day and was able to pick up the things we needed. So we went grocery shopping on the weekend, and most things were well stocked. And now we're also on gas rationing because, again, people worried that the gasoline supply wouldn't get through and went crazy, filled up their cars even if they didn't really need it, which caused a shortage for others. And so now we're limited to 30 liters per fill up. A lot of us aren't able to go anywhere anyway because of the restrictions on travel. So Cameron, thankfully, as I mentioned last week, was not caught away from home or away from town. So he's been working close to home. So he just has a very brief commute these days. My car's got a lot of gas in it, so I'm not too worried about that either. Some things are getting through. Like I said, I got some mail. I do know some other couriers and even the post office are holding some things until our routes are more open. I have a treadmill that I ordered a month ago that is on its way from back east, and I have no idea where it is. I have no idea when I'm going to get it, but I hope it's soon because it's miserable walking in weather like this, and so I don't. Sometimes I'll just walk up and down our hallway to get some steps in, but I'm hoping that will arrive soon too. As I say though, those types of things are, minuscule compared to what some people went through or are still going through. We have, in one slide, there are 4 people confirmed dead, 1 person still missing. Another woman is missing from another area of the province where they had severe flooding. A number of people nearby are still flooded out. One of Cameron's employees was evacuated from her home adjacent to the Sumas Prairie that was so badly flooded, and she and her family have been living in their trailer, the camping trailer, ever since. She has no idea what she's going to find when she returns home. In one way, it's um, a good thing. That's not even the right word. They were renting the place that they were living in, so at least they're not responsible for rebuilding and all the costs and troubles involved in that, but they will possibly need to find another place to live. Another place out of town, actually where Cameron had been working so much this year, called Princeton. That town was partially flooded, and one of the employees from the store there, he and his family, again, were renting a home that they were evacuated from, and they've been living in a hotel. At one time, it was him and his extended family. At one time, there were 10 of them sharing a hotel room. Now, apparently, they have 2 hotel rooms between the 10 of them. So, could be so much worse. So I'm grateful to be warm and dry and safe. Oh, let's talk about something more pleasant. We got some new end tables for our living room. So this past year, I guess it was. Yeah, I think it was back in May. We had bought some new living room furniture, and we got it in a couple of different deliveries because things had to, come from somewhere else. And we were still lacking one end table. And we were told that we wouldn't be able to get it until April. But that if they weren't able to get it, that we could return the one we already had that matches it and then get a refund. So as it happened late last week, we got notified that they wouldn't be able to get a second table, and so we returned the one we had, got a refund. Unfortunately, weren't able to find anything in their store, but did find a set of tables in a different store that were in stock, and so we brought them home, put them together, and now our living room furniture is more or less complete. I say more or less because we have our couch and love seat and end tables. We really do need to replace some bookshelves and an old stereo cabinet in there, but that wasn't sort of front and center. So the things we are really looking at replacing, that's all done now, and we're enjoying those. And then another nice thing is our grandson. He turned 11 on Sunday, so hard to believe he's 11. I still just remember I was there when he was born, and I just remember thinking that looks like a little boy face, and sure enough, it was. So we went over there and had supper with them on Sunday. So that was really fun. And then my something good, speaking of grandchildren, is Pfizer has been approved in Canada for children ages 5 to 11. And so our younger 2 grandkids are now able to get their vaccines. And I know Jessica registered them as soon as she could. And they are going to start administering them in the order in which people registered. So they should be getting their shots very soon, maybe even as early as next week, which is when they start. So very good news indeed. I believe now in British Columbia, it's somewhere around, I want to say about 87% of all eligible people have their vaccine. So hopefully we'll get a good chunk of kids in that number too, and just let life get back to normal even more. And for lots of us, there's still, we can do a lot more than we used to, but there's still restrictions in place for various activities and things, and so it'd be nice to see life return to normal. It's been a crazy couple of years here in BC between the coronavirus, all the forest fires over the summer, and the floods. As I've mentioned to a couple of people, there's sort of a joke going around about what's next. Locusts? We've had our fires, floods, and pestilence. So I hope that's not the case, especially for these poor farmers. So, yeah. Okay, this is a long one, I think. So if you've stuck around for the whole thing, thank you for your indulgence. I hope you are well wherever you are. I hope you are, in a good place heading into this last month before Christmas, if that is a holiday that you celebrate, or of course there are other holidays around this time of year with lots of celebrations. So, yeah, drop me a line. Tell me what you think about my sweater. Are you interested in some sort of, holiday gift craft along? I would, be happy to set up a thread for that in the Ravelry group. I know it's been a little quiet in there lately, but I would happily set up a thread if you guys all want to chit chat to each other. So let me know what you think about that too. It's just be something casual. It's not a competition or anything, just a place to gather. And starting to give some thought to next year, but we'll talk about that more in a later episode. So until then, take care. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you again very soon. Bye.